To introduce Mike Krzyzewski, here is his sponsor, the man who coached him at Army and hired him as an assistant at Indiana, Hall of Famer Bob Knight.
I think perhaps if I did anything to help Mike along the way, it was show him a hell of a lot of things not to do. I think that he learned well in that regard from some of the things that I've done over the years. Last night, I had really interesting several minutes spending with Paul Arizin and Sam Jones and Tom Gola. And they had something in common other than being great basketball players. They all had served in the military. And I think here on the most hallowed night in the entire year as far as basketball is concerned, it would be really neat if in front of America, basketball and those of us here tonight showed what a commitment that basketball and the people who love the game are willing to make to what our future is now, which may be the most difficult period America has gone through since the Civil War. This is going to be tough. It's going to be hard on all of us. And with that in mind, I'd like for basketball, everybody here that has served in any aspect of the American military to please stand. I think if we realize that people such as these and those before them and all of our people who have served in the armed forces over all of the years, if what they've allowed us to do what we're able to do here tonight, and the people that are currently in the armed forces are going to need all the support that we can give in these next months and maybe even years. And let's, in every way we can, let's basketball do as much as we possibly can to give that support. Mike always kind of downplayed how good he was as a player. Mike was a very, very good basketball player. And I've heard him say on occasion that in playing for me for 3 years, about midway through the second year, he thought his name was Damn It Mike. And I think that's a reflection of the responsibility that I put on his shoulders as a guard. We had two outstanding guards at that time at West Point, Mike and Jimmy Oxley. Jimmy's a doctor, and he's here this evening to honor Mike. Mike understood as a player what he had to do, not to play, but to help his team win. And I've used that as an example as long as I've coached. And I've talked about Mike, and kids that I have today or have tomorrow or have had in the past can all relate to Mike because they watch his teams play on television. And I talked to our players about him as a player. He was a leading scorer in the Chicago Catholic League when he was in high school at Weber High School. And yet he came with us, not a particularly good shooter, and he learned to be an outstanding defensive player. He learned to handle the ball without making mistakes. He learned to do essentially what I wanted him to do. He learned to really understand the game. And as I said a moment ago, I would hope that Mike learned some things not to do from me. But Mike is one of those guys, like I always thought that Doc Councilman, who was a swimming coach in Indiana, and Bo Schembecker, the football coach at Michigan, could have coached anything. Mike kind of supersedes that, I think. Mike could have done anything. He didn't need to be a basketball coach. He could have done about anything he wanted. And I mentioned that this morning at a little press conference that we had after the Mike and Moses and John received their Hall of Fame jackets. And I said, I think that Mike could have done anything he wanted to. And somebody asked him, one of the press people asked him, well, Mike, if you'd have done something else, what would you have done? And Mike said, well, you know, I might have been a writer and written a sports column. And I told him that'd be a hell of a waste of an intellect because damn near anybody can do that. I just thought that it would really be to his advantage to have picked something that that would have just taken a little more intelligence than writing something would. You know, Ahmad talked about Mike's championships and the great teams that he's had and the players that he's had. But let me tell you something. That's not, in my mind, what Mike is all about. What Mike has done with his basketball team is show, I think, better than anybody that's ever coached the game of basketball, that good students can win, students that really represent their university on and off the court well can win. I think that his teams, in terms of how they go about playing the game, are a model for every team that plays basketball at any level in the United States. And I think that's that's not the what that Mike has accomplished. That's how he has accomplished it. I think that he's just ahead of anybody else coaching in terms of all of the things that are important that go into making a winning basketball team. I would, John Thompson mentioned John Chaney and me deterring any kind of a terrorist attack, but let me tell you something. If I were in a little bit of trouble, the first guy I'd want walking down an alley with me would be John Thompson. And the second guy would be Wayne Embry for a lot of reasons. And among them are they're damn bigger targets than I am, too. With a thought about not the games or the championships that he's won, but what he has meant to basketball because of how he has coached his team, how he has brought a team together, and how it's played like a team, the example that it gives all of us of teamwork, the example that it gives us all of playing the game, not complaining, not worrying about the officiating, giving up passes, the example that these kids of Mike have set under his leadership, and particularly during these last 10 years. I just don't think that anybody ever has put all of these ingredients together. And that, more than anything, I think, is Mike's legacy and why he deserves being honored here tonight, along with Moses Malone, who came from a background that was going to be tough for him without college to do what he did in the pros. John Chaney, we've talked a lot about John. We all feel about John, as I think many people have indicated. But it's a real special thing for me to present Mike for induction into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And with that, I'd like to give Dave Gavitt, a graduate of the United States Military Academy, a former Army officer, and the best coach that I've ever had a team play against. Mike, would you come up here?
Mike is escorted by his daughters Melinda.
Mike Krzyzewski, what a singular honor for me to be able to present you this evening. Your record is remarkable. Your legacy, as Coach Knight said, will be the utmost integrity, class, and style with which you have served your great university, the student athletes who have been privileged to play for you, and our great sport. By the vote of the Honors Committee and by the power invested in the Board of Trustees, it is my honor to induct you as a coach into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame with all rights and privileges.
Thank you very much. Wow. Coach, Coach Knight, thank you. I've only called one person coach in my life, and that's been you. And you may say that I've learned some things that I shouldn't do, but the things I shouldn't have done, I've done on my own accord. But most of the things that I have done, I've learned from you. And there's no really greater honor for me than having you be the person who presented me tonight. Thank you for doing it. For me, there's no greater thing that someone could call me either, besides Dad, than Coach. It's been my honor to be a head basketball coach, and now in my 27th year. As much as I love the game of basketball, I love the people who play it much more. The game is the game, but it's the people who make the game what it is. Over the last 2 days, I've had an opportunity. Coaches are always thinking of like what their team is doing, recruiting and all that, and I still feel like I'm a fairly young coach, that I got a lot of coaching ahead of me. But these last 2 days, I've allowed myself to do something coaches don't usually do, and that is kind of just get wrapped up in the moment. For, I want to say me, but coaches never talk in singular like Sonny Hill. John? They always talk in plural. So I wanted to take these 2 days really to feel about us. And I've really experienced a myriad of emotions. Yesterday in a press conference at Duke before we came here, a reporter asked me, not a very intelligent reporter, by the way, just fit that description, but it wasn't a stupid question. It was just maybe not a complete sentence. But and he asked me, he said, how do you feel about going in and becoming immortal? And I said, well, believe me, I've never thought about being immortal. But going in, you know, it's an amazing honor. But when he said immortal, something just triggered with me that I shared with my family last night and some of my family members today. My dad passed away when I was a senior at West Point. He never got to see me graduate from the academy. And at that time, Coach did a number of amazing things to help me through that during my senior year. And but when I heard immortal, I thought of my dad. And I don't know if many of you who've grown up in ethnic neighborhoods. I grew up in the inner city of Chicago in a Polish neighborhood, and I didn't know my dad very well. All he did was work and provide support for us. And, but I thought of him at that moment, and I said, man, I wish he was here. And because he wouldn't have been so surprised, just like fathers are proud of their sons. I don't think he would have been so surprised. Yeah, my son could make the Hall of Fame. But he would have been amazed that somebody with the name Krzyzewski would make it. And when I grew up in Chicago, my dad was an elevator operator, and my mom used to clean offices in downtown Chicago. And they never went by the name Krzyzewski because of prejudice. Although we have prejudice today, at that time, there was a white world and a black world. We didn't even call it prejudice. It lived in two different worlds. But there was a lot of prejudice in the white world. And my dad always went by the name of Cross, just so he would get jobs, so we could eat. And they never wanted me to take Polish. Like, people ask me, do you know Polish? And I said, no, I don't know how to speak Polish. I said, well, it's fashionable today. And the reason I didn't know this until I was a lot older, the reason they didn't want me to take Polish is because they didn't want me to have an accent, so that I wouldn't be discriminated against. So I'm glad my dad's in the Hall of Fame with me. And my mother passed away 5 years ago, and she didn't go to high school. And she said her mission and her job in the world was to chase dirt. And she said, I'll do a good job of it. You'll never see dirt anywhere in my house because I'll chase the heck out of it. And I'm going to beat it. And she did, day in and day out. My mom, about 10 years ago, after we won our first national championship, I was recruiting in Chicago, and I always stayed in her apartment. And whenever I'd be out recruiting, I'd come back, and she'd have sandwiches made, soup. I liked ice cream, but I liked it already stirred up, and so she didn't want me to stir it up. She stirred it up. I mean, she just took care of everything. And we're sitting there, and as she's watching me eat, and she didn't bother me. It's the way it was, you just didn't bother the man. But after I got through eating, she just said, Mike, why is it you? And I said, what? Like, why is it you? How are you the coach of the national championship team? You see, in our neighborhood, we didn't think we were bad, but we never had the vision of being great. In fact, I tell a story that my mom gave me great advice. She told me, Michael, always have a friend that you're better than. So wherever you went, you wouldn't be the worst person. That's how PJ and I got to be friends. A year later, his Irish mother told me that she told him the same thing, and I was that guy. Wherever the hell, we're really good friends. But the reason she said that was she never really, she couldn't believe that we could attain. There was always a limit on your dreams. But she also told me, she says, always be with good people. And so my players will attest to this. I always talk about being on a train every season. You're either on the train or you're not on the train. Train's always moving. You're going to get on or get off. But when you're on, you better be on all the way. And basically, what my mom did and my dad did was they started me on a train throughout my life. And they gave me an example of being with good people, because it started with them. It started with the Krzyzewski family, the Pituk family. It started with my buddies, the Columbos, who are here from Chicago and who I've been lifelong friends with. My buddy Mo, who We weren't a gang. We just were a group of people who got together and we played games and we loved one another, and we shared in the ups and the downs of each one of our friends like it was our own. So my train got a great start. I went to Weber High School, and there's a guy, Ellis Strowski, there, who, my coach, and he said, he said a little bit, Coach, something you didn't say. He said, shoot every time you got the ball. Hence, there was somewhat of a conflict a few years later, but wanting to live for a longer period of time, I made adjustments in my game. It's amazing how selfish we get about life. He's really the first person outside of my family who believed in me enough to say, go and follow your instincts. You're good. We don't say that enough. You should say it. You should say it more. You should tell your friends and your family and your kids. Tell them they're good. Tell them that you believe in them no matter what, because what you create then is what was created for me, and I didn't know. It was a foundation of unconditional support and unfailing love by my family and friends. And so that train went forward, and all of a sudden there was a young coach from Army who was recruiting me, and I never thought of being an Army officer. I grew up in the city of Chicago. I mean, I wanted to just play ball, become a teacher and a coach, and all of a sudden Coach Knight came into my life, and West Point did, and my family said, you have to go. I said, I don't want to go. And they said, you have to go. West Point is for the rich and for the privileged. That was their feeling about it. It was for the rich and for the privileged. And that's what we want for you, because if it happens for you, it'll happen for us. And so I went to West Point, and I got to play for probably the best coach ever. And I learned about the game, and I learned about myself, and I met amazing people, and I learned about leadership, and I met Jimmy Oxley, who's a lifelong friend. I met I met so many good people who got on my train, and when I was afraid to do something on my own, they said, keep the damn train going. We believe in you. We believe in you. And so then the train went to the Army, and it went to Indiana for a year, and then went back to West Point to coach. And there I had really good players. Pat Harris, who's the coach there, Gary Winton, Matt Brown, a number of them. And I learned to win and have a group play together so that 5 can play as one. I ask my team all the time when we start out the year, and they think I'm tricking them. And I said, is 2 better than 1? And they're always afraid that I'm going to goof on them or whatever. And yeah. And I said, well, not necessarily. 2 is better than 1 if 2 can act as 1. And if 2 can act as 1, imagine if the 5 of you playing on the court every second can play as 1. It would be beautiful. Imagine if you could trust one another and follow your instincts and come into support of one another. You could do something to the utmost of your ability overall, because none of us can do what all of us can do if all of us do it together and all of us believe in what we're going to do. And so I learned that at West Point. I learned that I could be successful doing that. And then I went to Duke, and a guy named Tom Butters hired me, and he was my athletic director for the longest time. And our first 3 years we were 37 and 47. And in today's day, I might be a writer, because I know I wouldn't be a coach if I was coaching today, because somebody would have fired me. And at that time, commitment meant more. Athletic directors, presidents, and coaches actually were on the same team. We need to get back to doing that. And so at Duke I had At Duke, because it's truly one of the great institutions of learning in the world, and I had a chance to attract some of the best kids in the country who could also play basketball to play for me. Guys like Johnny Dawkins and Amaker and Snyder and Billis and Allery, Ferry, Leitner, King, Hurley, Langdon, Brand, the guys who are on my team, Chris Collins, Wojciechowski. I mean, the list goes on and on. And a number of them are here, and I've missed some of them, but I would just like all of my players from Duke and those from Army to please stand up right now. So And so for 21 years, I've had an opportunity. You guys can sit down. It's enough. What the hell's going on? We haven't started practice yet, Coach. You can tell. And we're getting ready to start my 22nd year at Duke. As a result of being with those type of people, having those type of people on my train is now in Springfield. And so tonight, for me, it's not a matter of thanking these people. You don't thank somebody you shared something with. Because the biggest compliment and the best feeling that I could get is that for all my players, coaches, family members, to come into the Hall of Fame with me. There's no greater thing that you could call me but coach. And for a coach to get honored in such a way to come to the Hall of Fame, he or she must have great players and assistants. And so as the train's going in here and we accept this, I say we, I want you all to feel that way. Most importantly, though, the key members on my train have been my family. I've had the best brother. I've had the best brother. I could never be the brother he is to me for me to be that to him. He's a little bit older and he's twice as big, and he's a captain in the fire department in Chicago, Illinois. And I'd like to introduce my brother Bill. There's no alley I was ever worried about walking down with him being by my side, believe me. To have them come into the Hall of Fame with me, to have my beautiful daughters escort me up here and be a part of what we're doing means the world to me. However, the most important person on that train is my wife, Mickey. We got married on graduation day at West Point 32 years ago. She's a very talented. Of course, you can see where my daughters get their looks. She's been my partner. She's been my partner. She has sacrificed a lot of her abilities so that she could complement mine. As my train goes into the Hall of Fame with my players, assistants, my family, all the members of my team, the Columbos, Mo, all the people, the person I want to walk and be in the top front car as I leave this podium is my wife, and I'd like for her to join me right here. You never accomplish all that you accomplish alone. My train has been full of great, great people. I can tell you that this has been the best person on my train, and we're going to keep the train going. Thank you very much for this.